As the president of a gaming peripheral company, Chen Zhi traveled to the eerie disaster lord and discovered that he had a way to connect the real world with the eerie world. Therefore, he made a bold decision. To let people from the real world explore the eerie world, perhaps with the opportunity to go back. It's time for this world to feel the true power of natural disasters. Keywords of the novel. I time traveled to become the Lord of the Scourge without a pop-up window. I time traveled to become the Lord of the Scourge. Download the full text. I time traveled to become the Lord of the Scourge. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Welcome Collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Welcome Collection. The author is working hard to save the manuscript, and the babies they like will be collected and brought home first. We look forward to the future together. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. God of Disaster. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 God of Disaster. Chen Zhi once heard that the end of science is theology. Now he seems to have some faith. In fact, he couldn't believe it or not. At this moment, he wished he could rub his temples to relieve his slightly sore brain, but thousands of hands completely disobeyed his commands and twisted recklessly. Yes, it's twisting. He collected his emotions, and if he had the intention, in any case, there would be no worse situation than this. As the president of a company that researches and develops peripherals, he feels a near collapse of despair. What kind of thing is this? A few hours ago, his R&D team brought in the latest virtual helmet device, which can be said to have very basic functions, feeling like someone is lying down to play VR. The operational part involves conducting electromagnetic induction of brain pulses in several key active areas of the brain. For this rudimentary device, it can only be called a concept product. Unlike the ergonomic mouse and keyboard he is currently developing, this thing is used to hype up concepts. This is the stepping stone for him to enter high-end peripherals from keyboard factories, but it is indeed like a useless brick. So he forgot about it when he was at work, and after working overtime, he remembered it and put it on for a test. In the words of the R&D personnel, this thing is absolutely safe. It just doesn't have strong functionality and can only control characters to push boxes on the screen. However, in reality, after putting on this thing and experiencing a severe pain, Chen Zhi came to the present world. Yes, he was incredibly certain that he had traveled through time. And what's very tragic is that he crossed over to an evil god. Fortunately, those complex pieces of information may have been processed by the helmet's embedded system or subconsciously, compressed, packaged, and encrypted deep in his memory. He only needs to meditate in his mind to see the packaged memories on the desktop. If you want to search for useful information, you can still find it without making yourself too overwhelmed. In short, after a burst of excruciating pain, he acquired a new body, an indescribable body that looked quite shapely. After resting for a while, he finally managed to control those arms and let them fall quietly and obediently. Then he said to the woman named Sina in front of him, "My believer, you have done a good job." Sina seemed expressionless and couldn't tell if she was devout, mainly because the other person was hanging their head low. Do not look directly at the gods, even if it is just a weak evil god. The great god of disaster, our current situation is very dangerous. Please forgive me, there is no safer place than this. Andrew, an old man beside Sina, trembled and said, "We need to preserve our strength, maybe it will take 10 or 20 years. Indeed, there is no safer place than this." Chen Zhi originally wanted to shake his body, but his soft and prone hands became restless. The old man lay on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. This is the sewer of Tana City, and it is also the abandoned sewer below the city hall. Even if this evil god doesn't pay much attention, settling down here would be enough to be considered an insult. But they have no choice but to be tracked by several major Vatican. There is no more suitable place than here. I can feel your sincerity. Chen Zhi finally regained control of his body and said, "You need to hide yourself and not let the people of the Vatican discover." "Following your will, it's just my lord." What are our next plans? The lady named Sina lowered her head and said. It seems that this believer is not as respectful as Andrew. Chen Zhi's hand became restless again, and then he continued, wait for my will, be careful to conceal yourself. The situation is quite bad, and Chen Zhi knows that he is hiding very well now, at least for a few years. He cannot be discovered by the people of the Vatican. Tana City is a rather chaotic city located on the border, where all 5 major papal churches have followers. There are numerous undisclosed sects, and if hidden here, none of the 5 major papal churches can make a move. Moreover, this is already considered an autonomous city-state, and whether it is a king or a consul, speaking here is not as effective. In fact, even the city lord needs to be replaced with a new one in less than a year. This place is so chaotic that no one will pay attention to the sewage system. After a significant reduction in their own strength, not only are they not opponents of the Vatican, but even those small sects who are usually disliked can be cut. After all, who would love disaster? Not to mention this god of disaster and misfortune, his control over disasters and misfortunes is not very strong. His divine power was already divided among other deities at the beginning. According to the searched memories, his divine power was divided for a long time before waking up from a sealing item and parasitizing on a thief who stole the seal. It was like this little thief who had never awakened, who took the seal off a certain executor and brought him to the mortal world. That's a real disaster. But centuries later, this disaster lord became even more useless. 2 servants were sent away, and Chen Zhi kept flipping through the information until his computer's WeChat pop-up window appeared. Brother, where have you been all day? I didn't even answer your phone. QQ doesn't reply, WeChat doesn't reply, SMS doesn't reply, you're going to die. Can you just let go of your broken company and focus on producing some mechanical keyboards? What's the use of those fancy things? You really think you're an expert in ergonomics when you stay up late at night? Chen Zhi, who was mercilessly exposed by his older sister, shook his entire arm. I'm not an expert in engineering, but I can be considered an expert in the human body. Anyway, there's something going on. I might not be able to go home soon. What can I do for you? I didn't expect to be able to type and communicate with my family, which made Chen Zhi extremely excited, and he became a little dancing. It's nothing, I saw a helmet on your desk. It seems to have been developed and I'm planning to give it a try. Don't. Before Chen Zhi could even type his words, he felt a force coming out of his body. He was startled and quickly swung his arm, and an indescribable substance appeared on the ground. I'm going, is it so real? Brother, you can do it. What's going on? The facial recognition system isn't working properly, is it? As he spoke, an indescribable substance on the ground appeared in a blurry human form. But it still looks like a mosaic. If he could take a cold breath now, Chen Zhi would definitely take it. With his arms trembling, he didn't expect to harm his sister. He really wanted to say, don't touch that disaster helmet, but it's too late. The figure on the ground quickly took on its own shape, and his sister was truly a master of her peers. She didn't waste her time learning art and sculpture, but in short, she made herself a beautiful beauty. Even put on clothes. Hiss, this NPC is also too silly. It shouldn't have been generated by AI, right? I knew Chen Zhi likes to try to save trouble. After saying that, she touched the surrounding walls with her hand, and the wet and sticky feeling instantly spread to Chen Zhi. After all, the other person's body is separated from oneself. Chen Zhi was in great pain at this moment, and he didn't understand why such unfortunate things would happen to him. Just as he was thinking about it, his sister's body collapsed straight down, and a faint pain hit. Then, a pop-up window popped up again on the computer WeChat in front of Chen Zhi. Your helmet is great, it feels great. It's a sense of presence. It's realistic. I didn't expect something groundbreaking to be developed for you. So, are you planning to make it yourself or sell a patent? This is an excited and shouting voice. Chen Zhi is a bit confused. He has always been unable to keep up with his sister Chen Ai's thinking. I think it's best to make it yourself. You know, this is a groundbreaking thing, it's a pity to sell it to others. It seems that besides not being able to go back, my younger sister can still go back. Chen Zhi breathed a sigh of relief. It took a while to reply to the other party. What do you think can be done better? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. New Natural Disasters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 New Natural Disasters. After checking the information in the mind of the disaster lord for 3 days, combined with some tests conducted by his sister and Sina, Chen Zhi finally felt at ease. He can to some extent control the helmet, using it as a connecting medium, allowing the person wearing the helmet to freely travel between two worlds. The person wearing a helmet can forcefully exit, and after being injured, they can also forcibly cut off contact, allowing the consciousness body that came to this world with the helmet as a bond to return to its original world. This relieved Chen Zhi a lot. Chen Ai has been complaining about the lack of content in the game. After all, she has not yet gone out of the sewer. She really imagined everything here as a game. It's okay, at least she doesn't know she really disappeared. Chen Zhi shook his arm in self-deprecation and then opened the newly created game forum. There are only a few scattered posts above, all of which were posted by Chen Ai himself. As for Chen Zhi, he posted a post as a member of the development team. This post is quite rudimentary, with a hint of unreliability. Dear user, the latest virtual game, New Disaster, launched by Zhishinaiha will start a new round of deletion testing on October 1, 2024 at 10.00. This is a true virtual reality game, a pioneering achievement bestowed by Shinji. New Disaster will open up the real world of Tana City, allowing you to experience the immersive gaming atmosphere. Wearing a helmet, you will enjoy the shock brought by the latest world-class technology and experience the real world. Test start time. October 1, 2024 10.00 New Disaster invites you to explore Tana City and step into the mysterious and illusory world together. Notes. 1. This test is only for virtual helmet device testing. 2. Please follow the Princess account, Lord of Disaster, to apply for a virtual helmet for free. 3. This test is a deletion test. After the test, the server will be shut down and the data will not be retained. 4. This test is a free deletion test, and the props generated in the game's characters will be cleared after the deletion test is completed. 5. This is only a test, and the quality of the game test does not represent the final game quality. New Disaster Operations Team. He is a peripheral device maker and suddenly plays games, which is a bit uncomfortable for him. However, we still managed to make a concerted effort to publish the announcement. Although Chen Zhi usually plays games, he doesn't play them deeply enough. He even seeks help from a substitute to solve problems in his daily life. He doesn't pay too much attention to game announcements or even game content. So the game content was almost completely unexpected. Anyway, when the others arrive, how should the game grow and be done? Isn't it natural to push the boat with ease? As for doing it on his own, it's impossible. He's the only one doing peripherals, why bother using this brain? After this announcement was forwarded by Chen Ai, it really received a lot of roast. Chen Ai has a lot of Weibo fans. After all, he has a lot of fandom, and the audience for his paintings is mostly LSP. Apart from beautiful women and handsome guys, he also often draws men and women, with 500,000 followers. Even if most of them are not active fans, there are still a few loyal ones. AI has finally started promoting. AI is not clean anymore. Unexpectedly, AI has also fallen. Hey, even if you take on promotion, you don't have to focus on quality. Can we say that the art of this game has invited AI? How to apply for AI's helmet? Are you also playing together? Several fast-moving fans have opened the forum and started applying for helmets. It has to be said that there are still benefits to making peripherals. With an extra shift in the factory, 100 helmets were made. After selecting 100 lucky fans of Chen AI, the package was sent out. When Li Yu opened the delivery box, he thought it was the motorcycle helmet he had bought. His previous helmet was just handsome, but its protective ability was not strong. Since a few motorcycle beauties he followed had an accident, he dared not play handsome anymore. Instead, he turned to buying a helmet with strong protective ability at first glance, which weighed heavily. If it weren't for the instructions inside the heavy box, Li Yu wouldn't have known what it was for. After trying it on, I awkwardly twitched my lips. There is a small game for pushing boxes on the test helmet, which is VR. It's also strange that Chen Zhi couldn't personally monitor the production, so the built.in small game was installed intact. There is no game icon for New Disaster on it. After playing with the box pushing game for a while, Li Yu put down his helmet, silently opened his phone, and contacted Chen AI. What's wrong with your promotion? This helmet can't even play games. Who said that? This game is simply amazing, I can't even describe it. It's definitely a cross-generational game. But isn't this just a VR device? It's so hyped up, but the effect is really not very good. What, isn't this not yet open for testing? Chen AI touched her head in silence, she had no idea what the small game included in the game was about. After all, as soon as she put on her helmet, she went into the sewer. Even if it's open beta, your game. Li Yu shook his head, how many people can play your game? He is not optimistic at all, just looking at the games that come with this gaming device, he knows that New Disaster will definitely not be fun. Nonsense, it's definitely going viral. Games are groundbreaking, and you're still enthusiastic about giving you a free helmet. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have asked my brother for this spot for you, Chen AI said unhappily. She was kind-hearted, but the other party took it for granted. Like Li Yu, those who received the helmet were greatly shocked. At first, I received it and felt that the game manufacturer was grand and generous. But after trying out the small game above, the person who received the helmet fell silent. They really don't understand how there can be such a game manufacturer in the world, and even more knowingly, they think that Jishinaiha, a company that is making peripherals, has come to make a magic barrier, and even took such a thing to hype the concept of the internet. How to put it, it's absolutely foolish. Chen Zhi doesn't know what happened yet. There are still 2 days left until October 1st, and he has a lot of things to do. For example, splitting one's own body. For someone like Chen AI who knows how to draw, even if you give her a silly idea, she can be transformed into a beautiful woman. But others may not necessarily have her level, whether they can be molded into the shape of a human is a question. And even if it's squeezed out, just this little place in front of Chen Zhi, stuffing him like a tentacle monster is already crowded enough, it really can't accommodate more than 100 people. So he needs to make some preparations in advance. For example, he created some basic human bodies by himself. As for his appearance, he found an AI program online that has been generated since then. It's hard for players to create their own faces. He doesn't even have the ability to develop this feature. For example, let your loyal followers throw out these bodies. Yes, it's just throwing it out. Throw it anywhere in the sewer, after all, you can't put it in front of yourself. When the time comes, let the person wearing the helmet enter these bodies. Chen Zhi has been pinching them for the past few days without doing anything else, and then asked Andrew to throw away these dead bodies. Andrew is indeed a faithful believer, he never asks his own lord what these corpses are about. Loyally doing what he should do. As for Sina, she does not agree with the actions of the disaster lord. It is now a tumultuous time, and doing such a thing may expose the hidden location of the disaster lord. But as a believer, she had to obey the commands of the Lord of Disaster. In 2 days, a group of believers will use those bodies. You need to find ways to guide them, Chen Zhi said, looking down at Sina. Sina lowered her head and said, I will abide by your will, but what do I need to guide them to do? Let them survive, Chen Zhi replied. He didn't know if he could go back. If he couldn't go back, he also wanted to do his best to leave a fortune for his sister, enough for her to spend a happy second half of her life. Without a doubt, this game is the greatest wealth he can leave for his sister. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Just Live. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Just Live. Liu eventually called on his good brothers to test the game. Although he gritted his head and promised his good brother a good meal, he still had a vague expectation for this game. Not only because Chen Ai is boasting wildly, but also because she has many female fans. It is said that 50 helmets were given to girls this time. What if we could have a good relationship? Liu and his 3 good brothers put on helmets together, swaying and tempting. The cutscenes are very cool, providing an overall introduction to the world view. Originally, Chen Zhi had no intention of making a cutscenes animation, but after being reminded by his younger sister, he realized that he had thrown these people into the sewer. If he didn't give a cutscenes explanation, they probably wouldn't know their basic worldview. So he recorded a cutscenes animation himself and played it on the screen. Fortunately, this body has the function of image memory, which can import the things seen by its split body into the system. The game helmet also comes with a screen, which can play this animation. In other words, each body has the function of photo memory, which is convenient for creating animations. After beautification, Chen Zhi described himself as the last old god, and these players are all followers of the god of disaster. They will assist the old god in logging back into the throne and making contributions to the god's war. After watching the animation, Liu felt dazed for a moment. He opened his eyes and slowed down for a whole minute, but he didn't recover. This world is really, as if it is the real world. He took a few deep breaths, and the smell seemed to be a bit unpleasant. Did he fart himself? No, it seems like I'm in the sewer. Can the taste also be made? This is too incredible. The nearby mice squeaked and crawled over a bunch of things with unclear meanings. Liu wanted to open his mouth and vomit, then disconnected the link. Damn it, it's so disgusting. He took off his helmet directly, took deep breaths, and the air in the room was still quite pleasant. He looked around in a daze, then bit his teeth and put the helmet back on. Good TM authenticity. He returned to the gaming world once again, this time ignoring the stench and filthy visuals around him. He only felt excited. This game is also too realistic. If it weren't for knowing that this is a virtual world, I would really think that this is reality. Even the touch, the taste. It seems that I underestimated Chen Ai. The things she recommended were really amazing. Where's my good brother? He quickly turned around and looked around. There's someone around, taking off their pants. Hello. Liu shouted, who are you? This game is indeed an inner version and surprisingly does not display an ID. How can I distinguish this? Is it just a matter of face? The bearded man across from him quickly raised his head and asked, is that my oily brother? I'm Li Yong. Yes, I'm sorry, why did you have such a face? You're talking about me, don't you know how to look at you? The bearded man across from him sneered, just your hooked nose is too ugly. Due to environmental issues, Chen Zhi chose a Western style when pinching the faces of the characters he created. After all, most people here look like this. According to Sina, there are also faces from the east outside, but not many. Only in the distant region of Luoji can such faces be found, and occasionally there are missionaries from there who come to spread their religion. There are also some darker-skinned people of different races, and of course, they can be pinched. However, for safety reasons, Chen Zhi still chose some common faces here. After being generated through AI, there is a feeling of a common face, and in short, the characters he pinches look very ordinary. Surprisingly, there was no step of pinching the face. It was indeed the testing stage, and the two of them quickly understood the difficulty of GM. After all, this game had already put in a lot of effort to make it so realistic, and the pinching feature was somewhat optional. The two quickly found two other good brothers, and the four named them daycare, kindergarten, preschool, and small dining table. The ID that the group has agreed upon is not displayed at all in the game, so the four people still call each other's names separately. Brother you, where are we going? I'm not used to this game. There are no missions or pop-ups, not even an NPC. Yeah, and why are only the four of us? As they stepped over a corpse, Li Yu and his good brother felt a slight chill in their backs. There were many people lying on the ground dressed the same as them, without breathing, as if they were corpses. It looks like other players. Perhaps because the small game on the helmet comes with a dissuasion function, many people who receive the helmet do not go online immediately. But soon, the four of them found the main unit. Walking along the sewer, I quickly arrived at a relatively wide passage where a woman wearing a white shirt and suit pants was standing in the sewer, facing several new people like them. Everyone is a newcomer wearing a white vest, and gray pants. Their appearance is also quite ordinary, but female characters are always much better than male characters, at least their physique is also quite good. Seeing Li Yu, Sina stopped talking and said to the newcomer, I'll repeat it again. It's best for you to change your pseudonym to something I can understand, and don't talk about things I don't understand. What do I think? I can't understand what she's saying, but I understand what she means. Me too. They don't understand Sina's language, but they can understand what the other person is saying. This is because when Chen Zhi created his body, he came with a translation function, but this function is currently only one-sided. That is to say, the body can translate the other person's words, but the player won't say it. There's no way, and Chen Zhi can't control how these bodies speak. Being able to translate is already very good. Upon hearing the whispers of several people, Sina blushed and said, I will continue to talk about the next precautions. I don't know what tasks my lord has arranged for you, but you need to survive here for 2 weeks. I will assist you in surviving here. It is indeed the testing phase, and everyone nodded. Sina's face turned even darker. These people can understand what they are saying. But they couldn't understand what they were saying. It's like they're deliberately playing with themselves. But they can communicate with each other and it's not like they're deceiving themselves. She could only regard it as the will of God, looking expressionless at the people in front of her. I will arrange for you to work on the farm. The Semilton farm in the suburbs can easily support hundreds of more serfs. I hope you don't disappoint me. Many of the believers of the God of Disaster are serfs, but there is no other way. This God is too humble, and there are not many believers with noble backgrounds like Sina. Since it's just to keep them alive, just throw them on the farm. Anyway, there's still plenty to eat in one bite. End of this chapter. Chapter 5 is indeed the internal testing stage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 is indeed the internal testing stage. It seems that this game focuses on farming style. The players followed Sina in confusion and crawled out of the manhole cover. There were not many of them, only 9. The outside world brightened their eyes. Tana City is a city with a long history that can be traced back to 3,000 years ago. It was once a land contested by multiple dynasties, with ports, mountains, rivers. There are many religions and disputes here, and for many years it has been in a chaotic area. Therefore, the architectural style of this city can be said to be quite fragmented, but the sense of history is also very heavy. Unfortunately, at night, there were not many lights around, which was also why Sina chose a more remote alley for safety reasons. The players who crawled out of the sewer finally saw a different new world, touching the ground, breathing fresh air, and seeing everything fresh. Looking at these strange people, Sina coughed twice and said, "Don't look around like this. Get on the carriage and I'll take you to the farm." If she had known there were only so few people, she wouldn't have prepared such a large carriage. It was just too conspicuous. Seeing the carriage leave, the two players crawled out of the sewer and looked at each other. Isn't it true that we missed the main mission? Is this a card bug? I knew I had just gone over to take a look. After arranging the cows and horses, Sina rode the carriage back into the sewer overnight. She felt a bit uneasy. The people who were arranged by the disaster were really strange, just like the beautiful woman who had been looking strange a few days ago. Her behavior was different from that of ordinary people. How did it go? How did they perform? Chen Zhi was eager to understand the situation of those guys. He realized that as a god, he was too weak to perceive players who were too far away from him. It is clearly a part that has been separated from oneself. In this way, if the other party is not in the urban area, then oneself cannot sense it. Isn't it impossible to monitor their behavior? Great Lord, they have arrived at the farm. I have arranged for them to sleep and they can start working for you tomorrow morning. Work for me. Aren't you working as a horse and ox on the farm of Sina, the big and small sisters? Chen Zhi twitched his lips. In order to avoid people who use helmets from becoming too addicted like their younger sister, Chen Zhi stipulated that every person who enters the game with a helmet for a total of 10 hours every day will be forced to exit, and then must wait for 13 hours to re-enter the game. Although he had already discovered that the day here was the night of the original world, and the night was the day here. But in order to avoid these online players being too obvious and being discovered, Chen Zhi can only arrange login tests at this time. It was all for the sake of caution, that's why he did it, but he didn't expect that by now, the real world had already reached 12 noon, and only 13 people were online. That is to say, the first batch of newcomers who entered the game, if addicted to the game, may go offline the next morning and not wake up to work as she expected. Don't force it, Chen Zhi swung his hundreds of arms. This is just a test. Following your will, but... There seems to be a missing part of the body in the sewer, Sina said nervously. She should have waited for all the corpses to be resurrected before sending these resurrected creatures to the farm. But she didn't have the patience. Seeing that the other corpses showed no signs of resurrection, she took the resurrected people directly to the farm. This matter needs to be concealed, so she didn't arrange for anyone to keep an eye on it. She just didn't expect that there would really be resurrected corpses in the future. Sure enough, the god of disaster in front of me is not yet as weak as I imagined. Chen Zhi's hands and feet danced for a while, and of course there were fewer corpses, but fortunately, they were all within Chen Zhi's sensing range. As long as he didn't go to too remote places, he could always locate these guys and let Sina find them later. Don't worry, they have their own way to go. Chen Zhi pretended to be a prodigy, but as for what these guys can do after running out, he wasn't quite sure. Anyway, let them go first, and delete them in no more than 2 weeks. Within the farm, the players who were locked up in the firewood room began to explore freely, and they found that the game was still in the inner stage, and the main quests could be said to be rudimentary to a certain extent. Follow the task without any rewards or prompts. I think this may be a type of free exploration, one player first suggested. I think we can explore this farm, maybe there's something unusual about it. It makes sense. Both male and female players are currently in an excited state, but one female player felt that the game was a bit scary and scared, so she went offline and is now lying on the ground as a corpse. Looking at the offline players who didn't even breathe, everyone can only sigh that it is indeed an inner stage game, and there are indeed many unreal aspects. At least I fell asleep, so I should be able to catch my breath, right? So the remaining players began their journey to demolish the firewood shed. They first searched the shed and only found 2 large knives for chopping firewood. This way, others can only use firewood as a weapon. For them, role-playing games are all about fighting monsters, and having nothing in their hands is really lacking in security. Let's go out, there shouldn't be much to search for here. The few people nodded, threw down the bodies in the firewood shed, and then walked out of the shed. This is a farm. The location of the firewood house is relatively remote, but the terrain is relatively high, which allows for a clear view of the layout of the farm. A vast expanse of fields, along with several thatched cottages where serfs rest, and a somewhat dilapidated castle. "Prepare your weapons, let's go inside the castle and take a look," said Li Yu. We're planning to take a look around," the two female players said with some fear. "I don't think we can be of much help either. Even if they have weapons, they don't know how to use them, mainly because this game doesn't have any skills, it all depends on their own physical reactions. Being able to persevere and not be knocked down by the dark night, these two female players are already considered good. Of course, there are even better female players who seem to prefer to see monsters earlier and go up and strike twice than a few male players. Let Meng Meng and Meng Meng explore the map, and I'll go with you to take a look." Yi Jiasin, holding a machete, was eager to try. "I just watched the animation, this should be a Western fantasy world. Maybe there are vampires in the castle. Okay, is there anyone else who wants to explore the map?" Li Yu has already regarded himself as the captain of the team, although there is no interface for forming a team. "Then I'll go with them," Li Yong said with a smile. "Someone must protect them, right? You kid, you value sex over friends. Although you also want to go shopping with girls, playing with girls is not as important as fighting monsters." Li Yu had forgotten his original intention and waved his hand as he assumed there would be monsters in the castle. "Please pay attention to the bugs in the game. This game is still in beta testing stage, and if there are any problems, please give feedback to the GM." I know. Li Yong left his teammates and went to the thatched cottage on the farm with two girls chatting and laughing. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Trigger the plot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Trigger the plot. There are only 5 people left, namely Li Yu and his 2 brothers. Lu Chuang and Zhao Shi, as well as a separate wild man who named himself Victor. As for Yi Jiasin, who became excited, she named herself Lolita, saying that she chose this name to complement the entire game. The group of people excitedly walked towards the castle, which was dark and no one could see clearly. It really made them touch the entrance of the castle. Someone. Lu Chuang and Zhao Shi grabbed the 3 people walking ahead. "See, there are a few gatekeepers. There must be a problem with this castle, let's go in and take a look." Li Yu has played many games and is also a very experienced person. "Let's go to the back door first and see if there is any way to bypass it." "We can climb over the wall," Lolita said excitedly. "We can climb over this wall. This must be 2 meters, how can we flip it?" Li Yu frowned and said. "Of course." Lolita was eager to try and quickly approach the wall, stepping on the uneven bricks and flipping over to the wall. "Come here, I'll pull you up." I really can't tell that this girl still has this kind of ability, but she saved herself the trouble of finding a way. A few male players also followed suit and climbed into the wall. There are not many people guarding the castle, after all, for Sina, this is just a farm, even if there is a castle that has been in disrepair for a long time. No one in her family knows that she worships evil gods, and this is not the place where she worships, so there are not many guards. As for these players, there were people watching when they first entered the woodshed, but who would have been watching these serfs who had little chance of survival? These serfs also have no courage to escape. If they run away, they may not be able to find a place to eat. Tana City cannot support these seemingly incompetent guys. So after Sina left, these guards left the woodshed and started drinking in the castle instead. Wine is not a good wine. After being mixed with water, the taste becomes even lighter, and it can only be said to have some flavor. As the caretaker of the farm, being able to drink is purely because the owner is not strict in managing it. The serfs who came today are quite sturdy. Miss finally knows how to replenish manpower, otherwise the autumn harvest work would not have been completed. It wasn't a while ago. Well, let's not mention it, we should still praise the sun, said one guard casually, while the people around showed a worried expression. Not everyone is willing to praise the sun. Legend has it that the sun god offended the beauty god and was later hunted down by the pursuers of the beauty god, becoming the target of criticism. From then on, the sun god was also known as the single god. As long as he wanted to find a wife, he would not want to believe in the sun. Not to mention, the followers of the sun god religion have some psychological problems. Who would openly discuss evil gods? A while ago, Tana City was completely plunged into disaster. The black rain falling from the sky made many people sick. Although the food supply on the farm was not a big problem, many people fell ill. Not only that, the several disturbances in the city were also heart-wrenching. It is said that several major churches have started chasing the mastermind behind the scenes, and conflicts between them have also been constant. Everyone says this is done by an evil god. Such a terrible evil god, no one dares to argue recklessly, and everyone can only drink with their heads closed. As for harvesting grain, these guards won't do it, it's all the work of serfs. Even if most of those guys have died of illness, they still have to go harvest food. As for the guards, they are responsible for protecting the safety of the farm, such as watching the serfs work and not letting them steal anything. There shouldn't be any props around here. I just pried open a few rooms and there's nothing. Lolita tiptoed up to Liu. Why don't we take out those drunken ones? Don't, wait a little longer and I'll fall asleep. Looking at the machete in his hand, Liu hesitated a bit. Although it's normal to play monsters in the game is also too real. If he were to get one result with one strike, he might not be able to bear it psychologically. Lolita, who was also holding a machete, nodded. Not only was she unable to lower her hand, but she also felt that she might not have the ability to do so. There is a slight difference between fighting monsters in games and committing violence in reality. Not to mention that these NPCs didn't recruit or provoke anyone, even those who received 9 years of compulsory education couldn't immediately transform into a mentality of slaughter. A few people waited for a while, and indeed a few NPCs got drunk and got down, so they tiptoed upstairs. No, isn't there a mission here? Although it is a castle, this ancient building has long been uninhabited by nobles because it is part of a farm. Most of the rooms on the second floor are empty, and there are also a few warehouses. However, some rooms have sleeping people. Even the butler in charge of the estate had already gone to bed early, and there seemed to be no abnormality at all. Can we say that the task is on the side of the serfs? 5 people were wandering around the castle in confusion, and Lolita couldn't help but say, why don't we try triggering the plot? Who is that? The butler, who heard the commotion, got up from the bed and looked into the hallway with an oil lamp in hand. Watching several people holding long sticks and machetes, the butler suddenly felt uneasy. He threw down the oil lamp, locked the door, and shouted loudly, "Hurry up! There's a thief! Hurry up! You damn skunks, when are you still drinking and sleeping?" The butler's voice was particularly loud, and a chaotic sound came from downstairs. The players immediately became alert and prepared to face the enemy. Sure enough, the mission has arrived. Several players were excited, and Lolita waved her machete, hoping to take a head first. She can even feel her heartbeat, thanks to the real environment. She feels the adrenaline all over her body soaring. The movement in the castle did not disturb the sleeping serfs. Due to the black rain, many serfs in the farm lost their lives due to illness. The remaining ones worked for more than 14 hours during the day and were already exhausted. So snoring started all over the thatched cottage. This game is really amazing, and it doesn't have a task interface. I don't know what to do, but it's quite realistic, as if I have a second life. Li Yong was looking for something to say, where is it interesting to chat up female players while playing games? Not to mention this time it's 2 female players. But it's a bit too true, I've never walked such a dark path before. A female player named Meng Meng clenched her stick and said, "Isn't this game a horror game?" I've seen the introduction and cutscenes, and it seems to have a horror style. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. This is definitely a bug. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. This is definitely a bug, no matter how terrifying it is. This is also an online game, as long as we have more people. Li Yong doesn't care about anything scary or not, it's just a game anyway. He cut off at least 100,000 zombie heads in the gaming world and wore the bride's wedding dress at least 100 times. As long as he had his own group of good brothers, horror games were also very funny, right? Then he stopped in his tracks. Surrounding several thatched cottages, several female serfs not far away were praying around a gallows. They were wearing tattered clothes, kneeling in front of the gallows, with a look of obsession in their eyes. In front of the gallows are 3 small baskets, plus 2 children who are already 2 or 3 years old. The children are all in a sleeping state, unable to tell if they are still alive. We ask God to grant us freedom, to give us endless wheat to eat, to give us a body that never gets sick. We offer our bones and flesh to follow in your footsteps. May they gaze down on the earth with you, may your breath walk on the ground, free from the soil. If it's just a ceremony, then it's not scary. What made Li Yong feel terrifying was the gradually fading moonlight in the sky. The originally dim moonlight turned into a faint red, and with a few crows howling, Li Yong's arm was tightly held by the 2 girls, unable to move at all. It has to be said that this game is quite realistic in places where it shouldn't be. It hurts so much. 2 girls are actually pinching their arms with their hands. If it weren't for knowing that they were also afraid, Li Yong would definitely shout out loud. It's a miracle. The miracle is here. A foolish man doesn't even know what a miracle is. Meng Meng pinched Li Yong's arm in fear, as if it could give her some courage. She trembled and said, "Those children are not already dead, are they? If there's such a big commotion and you're not awake yet, even if you're not dead, it's probably drugged." Li Yong swallowed and spat. Maybe it's because the game plot wasn't done well. This is a game, a game. I know it's a game, but I'm afraid. Meng Meng also tightly squeezed Li Yong's arm, trembling as she said, "According to the game plot, something should be happening at this time. It seems that this girl often plays horror games. After this plot, there are even more terrifying things happening no matter how you look at it." Sure enough, in the baskets placed in front of them, the children suddenly began to cry. Even the 2 older children lying down just opened their mouths and cried loudly. No children opened their eyes, let alone move around. Several praying women shed blood and tears in their eyes, and they began to mechanically kowtow, leaving only the sound of children crying in the entire environment. Li Yong and the 2 girls, who watched from the sidelines, also knelt down like those women, with tears and blood flowing from their eyes. Painful. Li Yong disconnected directly. WTF. His first experience of embracing each other was in such an environment. I still remember when I finally exited the game, the 2 girls hugged me tightly, crying. Blood-red tears. It was really scary. Besides, the feeling of headache made him hesitate for a moment, then picked up his helmet again, but when he put it on again, he couldn't get into the game. Bug. This is definitely a bug. Where can I still be disconnected after watching an animation? Besides, can't the pain be reduced a bit? There's no need to be so real. He angrily opened his phone and complained to his good brother. I haven't had a chance to get in touch with the girls yet, but I got stuck and disconnected. What's the situation on your end? Li Yu made a crying expression and said, "Don't mention it. We were taken offline by T more than half an hour ago, and after triggering the plot, we fell off. It seems we have encountered the same bug. What's the plot on your end?" After we arrived at the castle, we found the manager's room and were discovered by the manager. We got into a fight with the guards and then we disconnected. This. I'm afraid it's not as good as the plot I saw myself. Are you sure you triggered the plot? Li Yong asked. Stop talking about us, what's the situation on your end? Ignoring the other party's question, Li Yu asked directly. Li Yong pondered his words and then said, after we arrived at the farm, we saw a group of ragged women sacrificing children there. Then they all went crazy, and we knelt down uncontrollably. Damn it, is it so fierce? And then what? Li Yu asked. What else is there? Then we got stuck and disconnected, and now we can't even log in. Li Yu remained silent for 3 minutes before saying, at least this game is truly groundbreaking. I remember there was a forum here, let's take a look at the situation of others. At this point, there are already some posts appearing on the forum. Lolita, who was the earliest to go offline, has already started expressing her opinions and suggestions on forums. There are too many bugs in this game. Bye. Lolita, I played this game today, and AI didn't lie to me. The game is a good one, and it's really real and fun. It's a groundbreaking game. However, there are too many problems with this game. I hope the programmer can quickly make the necessary changes. Friendly reminder. There are no task prompts in the game, and you need to follow your feelings throughout the entire process. After going online, the feeling was very real. It can be said that this is definitely a groundbreaking game, but it is obvious that there are many problems. Apart from the lack of task prompts in the game, there is no reference to the various attributes of the characters, let alone the level of the NPCs. We rashly participated in a battle against the NPCs, and they only took a few seconds to completely destroy us. The most despicable thing is that after the plot ended, I disconnected and still can't connect. And after testing for 3 hours, the game plot didn't advance much at all, mainly because most of the time was wasted on the road, such as running from the city to the farm outside the city for over an hour. Running the map is really a waste of time. However, from the process of running the map, you can see that the scenery on the roadside is indeed different. In a completely open world, you can even smell the taste here, and the touch is also very real. The most real thing is probably the pain. I have never felt so much pain in my life. If a girl wants to play, she still needs some courage. After the character goes offline, she doesn't breathe and looks scary like a dead person. One of our teammates was too afraid to go offline. Because entering the game is mostly at night and I haven't seen the daytime, the entire scene is a terrifying black one. I suggest that everyone team up and travel more often. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. This game is too difficult to play. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. This game is too difficult to play in the darkness. There are many people who, like players, are unwilling to sleep. The movement at Hamilton Farm is not significant, but it does not mean that it will not be discovered by the people of the church. Even in places like Tana City, the people of the Golden Church will still be very active. The more places like this, the more opportunities for making money, right? Especially when most of the serfs on the farm were killed or injured, the wealthy nobles would not be so stingy for the unfinished grain. I'm sorry, this has happened. Sina looked at the hurried golden collar straps with a dark face. You know, there have been many bad things happening recently. There have been too many deaths and injuries on the farm, and it's hard to say if there are any evil gods planting the seeds of evil here. As soon as Sina returned, she saw a sight full of chaos. More than 30 serfs died here, except for a few children who were all women. At the same time, my guards also killed several serfs, which were taken away by the god of disaster. However, as a believer of the evil god, she was well aware that it was not the god of disaster that caused the death or injury on her farm, but another notorious evil god in the city of Tana. The Red Moon Goddess. She doesn't know much about this deity, but the irritable disaster always gets angry and frustrated every time she hears this name. If he knew about this, he might not be able to hide it. Of course, this is normal. There have been quite a few cult incidents happening recently, but unfortunately, you don't have many serfs here, do you? Said the captain of the Golden Tie with a smile. I added some more today, but obviously, they were affected. These guys didn't do as much work during the day, so they still had the strength to cause trouble at night and have been dealt with. In Tana City, it is normal for a few serfs to die, and even the church has no right to intervene. Believers who believe in the God of wealth, such as the Golden Church, will not care about these small matters. Oh. Miss Jones is lucky enough to find enough serfs, said Von Burr with regret. Due to the recent turmoil in Tana City, those poor people are indeed quite scarce, and there are not many people who can sell themselves as slaves. Under the jurisdiction of several major churches, although the city of Tana is chaotic, there are not many cases of human trafficking, and few people can be forced into serfdom. However, the Golden Church is different. Its Golden Chamber of Commerce has a large number of serfs, and as believers of the God of wealth, they can transport serfs from further south and sell them to the nobles who have the money to buy estates. Sina, also known as Miss Sina Jones, pursed her lips slightly and could feel the other party's faint dissatisfaction. That's why she hates the Golden Church. These guys only think about money and don't even deal with problems. Of course, this is also why she likes the Golden Church, precisely because they cannot solve problems, they will not expose their belief in the God of disaster. I am only worried now whether these ceremonies will have any negative impact on my family. You should know that my father intends to compete for the position of governor, Sina said impatiently. If I had known such a thing would have happened, I would have requested the protection of the war church. It's good if those guys don't kill all your serfs. Just listen to my advice, the war church is a bunch of brainless people, and their way of solving problems is to solve those who have problems. Feng Buer advised, believe me, we will solve the problem, at least make the people here forget the evil ceremony just now. Could you please, then? Sina nodded in satisfaction, my father will thank you. Tana City is that good. If it weren't at the border of the kingdom, it wouldn't be so easy to cover up the evil gods so easily. Those war believers or wise believers who are good at finding faults will put Sina in a difficult situation. Explaining these is really troublesome. When Sina was solving the problem, the forum started to get lively. It was already the afternoon in the real world, and as the number of people logging into the game increased, the popularity on the forums suddenly increased significantly. It's not that games are not attractive, and people don't want to play in games. But it's too difficult to survive. There are a total of 100 devices, and more than 40 people have died now. There are still some that have not been launched, and some that are still alive. Chen Zhi pondered and opened the next post, which was almost filled with complaints. Games are good games, but they are too difficult to play. Bye. Xia Feng, unlike the other guys, I missed the basic task of that farm NPC and instead explored the sewer. I have to say that this sewer is a bit too realistic, and several times I couldn't bear to go offline. However, precisely because of the reality, I feel it is necessary to explore more, and this game will become popular. But the more I beat it up, the more it smelled, and I ran into a mouse that could bite people, so I was directly bitten off the line by the mouse. I don't think this game will disconnect after triggering the plot, but after death. The development of this game is too unfriendly, and it doesn't say when the resurrection will occur. Chen Zhi silently closed the post and observed a moment of silence. This unlucky guy should have walked into an unused sewer. According to Andrew, there are monsters like water mice that can be considered demonized in any abandoned sewer. These mice have evolved to the height of human calves, so it's not a problem to kill one person with a few more bites. Tana City conducts a rodent extermination operation every once in a while, so Andrew specifically instructed himself to keep it hidden, otherwise, if the members of the church find themselves in the sewer, the problem will be huge. Rubbing the non-existent eyebrows, Chen Zhi summarized the problems currently encountered. Firstly, the created corpse cannot breathe, and this problem is not difficult to solve. Initially, Chen Zhi was only trying to save trouble, so he did not manufacture this function. In fact, breathing is a simple function that can be solved without player possession. Then there is the issue of task prompts, which is not difficult to implement. He can outsource the task interface to his sister and generate an interface for the player. This interface can include player-defined game IDs, basic character attributes, and mission instructions. As for blood bars and the like, it's a bit difficult for Chen to know. He needs more data to understand the player's basic attributes. But it's okay, during the beta phase, players will understand. Finally, there is the issue of resurrection after death. He can bind a player's ID to a certain body, allowing them to resurrect from a fixed location every time, such as a sewer. However, creating a body takes time. Chen Zhi thought about it and set a value for a day, so he didn't have to struggle with it and had enough time to do his own things. But what if the player's equipment drops after death and needs to be recycled? This problem really needs to be solved as soon as possible. He decided to ask that guy the next day when Andrew arrived. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. First Job. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 First Job. Although many unlucky people died in the game and howled on the forum, there were still a few lucky ones who stayed up late at night. The late night in Tana City is indeed dangerous, but when it comes to safety, it is indeed safe. After all, if it doesn't cause trouble, the probability of survival is quite high. Two sneaky players couldn't keep up with the main army and could only wander on the street. After walking for a full 6 hours, they quickly wandered through the city of Tana with a population of only 300,000. This city is neither big nor small, and compared to most games, it can be said to be magnificent and spectacular. The map of a city is almost the same size as some games. Speaking of texture accuracy, every part is completely different. If it weren't for the sudden emergence, it would have been developed for 10 years with great craftsmanship, and there would have been no problem. The NPC is also intelligent enough, and the two players can be said to have experienced a very rich storyline. On the way, they saw a couple beating children in the middle of the night, a lazy guard scolded by the captain, and a homeless man lying on the ground, driven away by the guards. As long as you don't cause trouble and be obedient, the guards won't directly kill you. Did you hear that? The two guards said they were going to the bar in the east of the city, said the player named Yun Xiao excitedly. I've been wandering for so long, and I'm thirsty. I just tried it offline, but in reality, drinking water is useless. I still get thirsty in the game. But we don't have money, do we? I just went offline and watched it. If we jump too much, we will die in the game. The two of them had just slept on the ground with the lazy guys for about 10 minutes and saw a lot of useful information on the forum. For example, one cannot go to the red light area casually, as it is easy to be stabbed to death when encountering someone robbing the road. For example, when you see strange people, don't follow them, otherwise you won't even know how they died. Guards cannot be provoked. Although NPCs may not necessarily be stronger than players, they use knives much more frequently than players. A well-trained guard dealing with 3 or so players is like cutting vegetables, and no wonder there are so many people howling on the forum. The player named Feng Bushi grabbed the cloud that wanted to take risks and said, "Do you remember the NPC named Sina who gave those players a mission before? Didn't they agree to survive in the game? I think the purpose of this game's beta test may be like this. What you said seems reasonable. We need to find a job." Yun Xiao calmed down. After 6 hours of long journey, he did feel a bit bored. If it weren't for the game being too realistic and having a second life, he might have found a place to sleep because he was too tired. Yes, this body really gets tired. Although his excitement returned to the real world, as soon as he entered the game, a sense of exhaustion hit his body. Strange to say, although he is more tired in the game, he prefers to stay in the game. After all, this game is full of freshness, as if it took him to travel to a new place, but unfortunately it wasn't during the day. Just now those homeless people said that if you want to find a job, it's best to wait at the train station at dawn. There often requires a lot of people to put in effort and help with moving things, and you can give around 25 tanas a day. Unfortunately, we don't know how much we can buy with 20.5 tanas, Feng kept pinching his chin. We can go to the bar to gather information. Bar. Trying your luck. Yun Xiao was unsure, so he said, "Didn't you say you wouldn't go? What do we need to do then?" The wind kept pulling the clouds. "We need to know at least how much tana a beer costs, otherwise all the shops won't open." "How do we know tana's purchasing power?" "It sounds very feasible," Yun Xiao nodded. Although he didn't know Feng Bushi before, he had already trusted this guy quite a bit as the night passed. If I hadn't been held back by him at first, but followed him to the farm, now I should also complain on the forum. After walking for over half an hour, the two of them finally arrived at Bar Street. Unlike other parts of Tana City, the smell of inferior alcohol could be smelled from afar. There are also more people, and there are many drunkards lying on the ground, but there are no guards to disperse them. Even if they pass by, they will pretend to be drunk and lie on the roadside. What they didn't know was that the guards would initially start driving away homeless people preparing to fall asleep from the bar street, but now that their work is done, they naturally don't want to bother with these drunkards. Well, the smell here is really strong. The bar street is not very clean, and even if you have to lie down, there aren't many places to lie down. This game is a bit too realistic in such places, with two players holding their noses and walking on the bar street. Most of the girls on the roadside have found suitable candidates, but there are also some middle-aged Sun Yang who did not win the favor of Anka and reached out to recruit two players. Looking at the makeup of these women, the two players hid far away and followed the semi-drunk crowd into a bar without admission fees. The bar was filled with voices, and one of them was shouting loudly, spreading the gospel from the sun. But it's too noisy, and he can only preach to a group of people around him. Just when two players inquired that a glass of the worst quality beer required 10 tanas, someone approached them. "Are you two here to try your luck? It looks like you don't have the money to drink." Brown Beard, sitting in the booth, looked meaningfully at the two players. "I just saw someone dressed like you, it's interesting." "It seems that a player just came over to disturb these NPCs, Feng kept pursing his lips and began to gesture. "There's no way, he can understand, but the other person doesn't know what he's saying, so he can only rely on body language." "Haha, why do you want to find a job?" Brown Beard's comprehension ability is good. "I don't know where you come from, buddy. If those guys didn't cause trouble just now, I do have work to assign, and if you want to do it, it's not impossible." When I heard of a job, the wind never stopped and the clouds lit up in front of me. "Just help us bury those burdens, be careful not to let the guards notice. This is your reward. 20 tanas, which is the official currency of Tana City, can buy 2 cups of the worst quality beer." Then Brown Beard led the two players to the back door, where 3 bloody corpses lay. 2 of them were dressed the same as themselves, obviously left behind by the players after their death. "I hope you don't be ignorant like them. If you do well, this job can be entrusted to you in the future, hahaha." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. First Serious Guide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.